tweet. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Magic Box. I am President Sean Gregson, back here with Kyle Eck.
You may remember us from such hits as that podcast we hosted, but haven't talked about in a month.
Yeah, well, closer to 3 weeks. Either way, it's been a long time. There's been some illness from our previous show. There have been some changes in workloads. And thankfully, there has not been that much change to the cube world while we've been gone.
As the world turns, cube does not. Because it's not round, it's a cube. It doesn't rotate very much.
Well played, sir, well played. Magical events that have taken place outside the cube world that may or may not have an effect on it since then. We've had the announcement of Vintage Masters for MTGO. We've had Eternal Weekend, showcasing some spectacular vintage play that affects those of us that love Powered Cube. Have I missed anything else?
Commander 2013 is officially out.
It dropped.
We have our changelog for that.
Yes. It updated ever so slightly. There were some rumblings of things we might have missed from Theros. There were some rumblings about things we just want to update in general. So we will be covering that today. But to quickly touch on the MTGO change, anything in Vintage Masters that's incredibly exciting to you? I mean, you can finally recreate, I'm pretty sure at this point, 100%, you could take like our cube list and you could recreate it on MTGO and draft with all your friends.
Is Portal 3 Kingdoms on cube?
Portal 3 Kingdoms kind of get jammed in there with like the Masters Edition sets.
Right.
So I don't think there's anything that we play that's missing. Like I know Ravages is on MTGO. Burning is on MTGO.
Rolling Earthquake?
Yes. Seems like
a card your voice leads me to believe you are not certain.
I am not certain. Okay. The irony is if you go to Gatherer and you type in those cards,
it doesn't
tell
you?
No. Doesn't it tell you Master Edition Online? I think there was a time that it did.
I mean, maybe.
Like type in Ravages of War, because I know that one is there.
Oh yeah,
Master Edition 3. There we go.
Yeah. Well, you know.
So yes, in June, you've at least got that to look forward to. I mean, there's all these rumblings.
8 months from now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of time between now and then. Our Cube tickets have turned into Phantom tickets, and hopefully real soon we'll get an announcement about the Holiday Cube, which
is always fun.
We can all hopefully look forward to. And
what's that around Thanksgiving to Christmas normally?
Usually the 2 to 3 weeks between the Christmas to New Year holiday is the MTGO holiday celebration. They're usually very generous offerings of formats and things you can do. I've in the past years enjoyed it.
My biggest thing about Vintage Masters is, it's about time. The power cards were kind of the last bastion of things not on Moto. We've had the Masters Edition sets. We've printed all the blocks. We've gone and done all the dual decks and all that. Did you really have to make this $7 a pack?
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. As much as I was thinking about, would this re-energize?
They can't ever be real cards.
Right.
This is literally ones and zeros forever.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Did you have to do this to us?
That's a lot of milking, and I feel like I'd already kind of vented about that a bit, so I kind of didn't even think about bringing that up today. But I definitely feel like
I get Modern Masters being more expensive because those cards are in high demand. They're going into formats that a lot of people are playing.
Plus, the cards in those sets were part of sets that were redeemable at MTGO at one point. There were people that had those cards that probably made a decision at some point, being like, do I redeem or do I hold on to them to play future formats? And things like modern or PTQ formats, there's a lot more that affects that. Now, when we're talking about Vintage Masters, the assumption is we're talking about cards that are going to be much older and much older only. Now, we don't know for certain. It still has to be a draftable, playable format. And those of you out there that
that's what they've assured us, is that the reason this is taking 14 years to come out is that it's going to be a draftable, awesome, Modern Masters-esque format, which is really a high standard they've set themselves to, because Modern Masters is an excellent draft format.
Completely agree. And as we're not, Masters Editions 3 and 4 were a little bit more sketchy on the draft formats, as much as I enjoyed drafting
the Masters Edition, not Modern Masters, Masters Edition, the first one was kind of like, let's make this badass, awesome set with all the old cards, and we can throw some staples in there too. And then 2 was kind of still like that. And by 3 and 4, there was more like, okay, we have to include this giant list of cards, build a limited format around these random 100 cards that we have to put in the Legacy environment.
And we'll conveniently shoehorn in a bunch of P3K stuff, so you're tagging with a bunch of horny elephants and stuff.
Yeah, horsemanship all over the place.
Which was fine for the most part. There just wasn't a lot of depth to format. Again...
It just wasn't, like, cohesive at all.
Yeah, you had,
because there's just stuff all over the place because they have to fit in a bunch of random cards.
You had the literal mono brown fireball deck. You had the white evasion deck. You had the black, pretty consistent kill all the stuff deck. It was like cards like Dakmor Plague were not hard to get a hold of in that format.
Right.
Like it was a shallow pool. It was a fun pool for quite a while, but it is a standard which I think is easy to surpass, and I think that I guess we have to give them credit for taking so long with Vintage Masters, considering how much of a roaring success Modern Masters was. So if it does meet that kind of standard that's set forward, it should be a roaring good time, which will make me all the more aggravated. It's $6.99 MSRP on this pack.
Also, like, post your classified ads now, buying Foil Lotus 200.
Again, what formats, what doors is this opening? So you're the guy that has a Foil Lotus on your account. Do you enter the casual room and just have people just leave?
Just wail on people.
I don't know. Like, what formats is
owning a Foil Lotus online is the most EP thing you could, like, possibly do, right?
You've played WoW. Is there any kind of equivalent?
I mean, it's different. Like, WoW dick waving was about time spent, not necessarily money spent.
I think you could equate the two, though.
Not really. I mean...
Really?
Yeah.
Kids don't have money, they have time. So
right.
on WoW, they spend infinite time, and then they have this thing. What is the thing?
Oh, God. It's been so long.
Your reference could be slightly dated, because you're no longer part of that pool.
I mean, in the long ago, it was flying mounts. Just raid gear in general. Grand Warlord in the original PvP system, which was you had to play every day for 14 hours for 3.5 months.
Alright.
So that's like what I'm like. You can't just here's my credit card.
And that's something that you could see 24/7 when
yeah,
you
it was
in
a
the
title
game?
above your name.
Oh.
So people would be like, "Oh, that's the guy." And there's only one on the entire server, or per faction rather. So.
Okay, well, that's pretty close. Because I keep thinking in terms of Spectral Tiger, where it's kind of like this is something you could show off,
right?
And it's easier to show that off in a game like WoW as opposed to you
can't show off your collection on Moto. You can't staple the Black Lotus to you can't make your avatar your Foil Lotus.
I just keep picturing casually entering trades with people. Maybe ones you're playing against, just have it be the only thing in the trade binder.
Yeah.
And leave.
What's up, bro? But presumably the reason they're doing this is that eventually they'll support Vintage as an online format.
All
the staples will be there. They'll have access to all the cards, whether or not they're incredibly rare or not, which is, I guess, is the point. But
I'm not sure if
you could have vintage. You could have Eternal Weekend on Moto. Here's some vintage. That's cool, right?
Right, and theoretically that would reach a larger audience because the vintage format, excellent segue, we have said on this show before, and I still believe is just slowly dying off.
It's okay. Help is coming in 8 months. Just hang on for 8 months from now.
Bunkered down, soldiers. You will be.
And a set that costs twice as much as every other pack will come out online only.
So there you go. With so much of the vintage card pool leaving the United States, it's interesting to have what is considered to be the definitive vintage tournament of the year in the United States. That said, Eternal Weekend was a lot of fun to watch. It's interesting to see what kind of audience it can reach right now, and I wonder how many more people you could reach, or if you've really kind of topped out. Trying to get new players that are playing the game to watch somebody play Tezzeret versus Dredge on camera.
Well, how could you get people to care? Modern Magic is so much different than what Vintage looks like.
Yeah.
If you're a player who started in, Scars of Miriam or something, or the last couple years, and you're like, oh, Eternal Weekend, I've heard of this Vintage thing. That's where you play all the cards, right? And you watch it, and you're just like, what is going on? No one has any creatures. No one's attacking. The highlight of the entire weekend was a double block and a combat trick, because that never happens. It's just so unrelatable for someone who has only played Magic for 2 or 3 years, as opposed to people from more our boat who have been playing longer, where all Magic used to resemble Vintage in a more diluted, Standard and even Extended was similar in the terms of the kinds of decks that were around, combo and blue control and things like that.
Sadly, those days are almost a decade old at this point, but they existed.
But so it was okay, well, this Vintage deck is Psychotog and Standard, but all the cards are way more powerful. And like there was some level of conversion there that you could make in your head. Now it's like, well, this vintage deck is like blue, like Esper Control, but it's, doesn't play any creatures, and it plays a but it's not as there's not as much of an easy.
It's almost impossible to relate to any standard deck that was played in the last 2-3 years, and that's not even including Dredge. I mean, trying to show Magic players that have started playing Magic after the boom of the game of the
concept
of the
Dredge.
Early 2010s. I don't know how to say that. Have them try to watch a Dredge player play their game is just gross.
I mean, let alone something like the World Gorger Dragon deck, or any of the Time Vault decks, or any of the other like excessively niche combo decks that are present in Vintage.
Niche combo decks are hard. Time Vault decks are not hard to understand. I think that most Magic players can be like, if A and B make it to the battlefield in some variety at any time, the game could just end. The universe could explode. It's over.
Yeah. I mean, the Time Vault decks are just like, wait, I don't get that card. Like, Time Vault itself is a weird card to think about in a modern context.
Yes, I think what's even deeper is once you start jamming, like the Stephen Menendians of the world have gone so deep on Vintage, where it's like, well, these insane combos only really take a few cards. Why don't we throw a bunch of them together? All right, let's take Oath. That used to be a deck. Let's take Teps. That used to be a deck. And let's take like the Tezzeret Vault decks. That used to be a deck. And let's jam them all together. Yeah. Because Oath only takes 5 cards to play. Teps deck can overlap with all these other things with its permission and fast mana, and the Vault Key combo can be like 3 cards.
Yeah.
So now you got people watching 4-color Oath decks that could just randomly storm off.
Right, like the game just ends in such bizarre, instantaneous ways. It's hard to follow.
I blame Gristlebrand. I'm going to point the finger at that guy. He made Oath a lot less, I guess, interactive. Not that Oath was super interactive before. I miss Oathing into things.
He's more interactive than Emrakul.
Terrastodon was my man. I love.
Well, that card's certainly more interaction heavy, but like Emrakul is less interactive than Gristlebrand.
Yeah,
Gristlebrand with his activated ability and all.
Yeah. The irony is when you Oath into Terrastodon, you give your opponent some elephants, and then you usually Oath into Emrakul.
Right.
Or Iona if you had a blue problem or a black problem from taps. Either way, I found those decks a lot more fun than just here's a Gristlebrand, good game, or the alternative, which is here's a Lab Maniac. I'm so stupid.
Right. I'm the biggest idiot ever. I'm trying to make this work.
I love Lab Maniac the card. I want to find a way to get more of those cube decks where that guy is good. I love in Crap Cube right now how you can demonic consultation your deck away if you have that guy in play. Anyway, I digress.
It's been a long time. What have you been up to in the last month?
I'm playing enough Magic, that's for sure. Working on other projects. Actually in pre-pro on something quite insane that you're not a fan of, I found out after you looked at my trunk last night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a big project lined up for that. Anyway.
That's embarrassing.
It's just a different...
I'm actually glad we're back to casting because we've still been cube drafting every week. And I feel like the podcast kind of keeps me honest because when we cube draft, usually, especially when it's like right after we podcast right after we draft, I feel obligated to talk about the deck that I just drafted, and therefore I feel weird or bad or ashamed if I draft a crappy deck because I have to talk about it in public. So like the last couple of weeks I've been like, oh, I know, I got work, you got work, yeah. I don't have to podcast. Well, alright, time to go crazy.
Which is
so weird. Like the best deck in the last month, the most real deck that I've drafted in the last month was 4-color mid-range dudes. That was the most real.
I don't remember that one.
That was like the Huntmaster Recurring Nightmare deck. That was like the best thing it did.
Oh. That was the best thing it did. See, it's ironic. See, I would think that you would be Dr. Frankenstein when you had opportunities to come and vent the experience and talk about what you learned and if you found new avenues. But generally, you will draft...
I wish to hide my shame.
Yes. I think the only thing worse than what you've been up to is the fact that 2 weeks ago I lost to your 4-color Seismic Assault, Life from the Loam, Bizarre Baghdad. What else was in that deck?
So it was... We'll go from the top. Seismic Assault, Life from the Loam. Academy Rector. Worked that way. Form of the Dragon, Yawgmoth's Bargain. Moat, I think, was in that deck. It was like every color. It was all 5 colors. It had like Vamp Tutor, Enlightened Tutor to go across that way. something else in the graveyard. I mean, it was a wild scene. There was a lot going on there.
Yeah, and then when we played, I won game 1 casually. I think I Sundering Titaned all your lands away.
I think you just played spells, and I didn't.
Well, I had a Tinker deck. Yeah. So the turning point was you were at a low point. Game 2, I tinkered out Blightsteel, and
no, you tinkered out Sundering Titan.
Well, you were going to lose the next turn, weren't you?
Right, and then I drew my whole deck.
Right. Yeah, it was a weird circumstance where you were at 19, you had a Seismic Assault and a bargain in play.
I just drew my whole deck.
Yeah.
And then I threw all the lands.
Right. You turned that one around, you won that one. Mm-hmm. But that deck overall won 2. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was that. Yeah, so
me.
Hopefully, now that I'm back into the land of responsibility, I'll even out a little bit and draft some more.
I don't know. I think yesterday's circumstance was a little more awkward.
Yesterday was an abortion. I don't know what I was thinking.
Afterwards, you're like, yeah, there's no reward for drafting Mono Brown in the cube. And I'm like, well, the reward is that you can play any cards, right? Shouldn't that be the reward?
No.
What should be the reward?
I don't know. Metalworker, being the fastest deck? The fastest, most unfair deck because you're not playing any colored spells.
So inherently, the colorless spells should be faster.
No, you should get cheats. You should get to cheat if you're not playing colors. The only colored cards I played were Lightning Bolt, Searing Spear, Tinker, Thirst for Knowledge. That was it in the entire deck.
Upheaval.
I boarded in Upheaval. I wasn't even starting it.
That also seems weird.
But Tolarian, Metalworker, Workshop are cards that reward the mono brown drafter, but they're super narrow.
Obviously. I stand by my stance on those cards, which is, again, they're all or nothing cards. They're too narrow, and they never lead to interesting games of Magic. I would rather Oath into Iona every day of the week than have to deal with that.
I mean, we could talk about the all or nothing cards at length in another episode, but I think there are a lot of all or nothing cards in Cube already, and we're just choosing an arbitrary line on those.
Okay, right now, what do you think would be the greatest offenders of all or nothing cards in the
Crusade, Honor of the Purest, Sulfuric Vortex, what else? Any of the Black Graveyard cards that we've decided to add.
Hating on them, or recurring out of them?
No, I'm saying cards that are all or nothing, super narrow, only one deck wants them. Crusade, Honor of the Pure, Oath of Ghouls, Oversold Cemetery, Bazaar of Baghdad really only goes in one deck.
That was interesting. I've seen Bazaar played in some other decks.
People try it out because I think it's unique enough that people want to play with it. Cards like, Ash Zealots, Skirk Firewalker, Sulfuric Vortex.
I draft blue-red like tempo, like nobody's business lately, and all of those cards are not mono red cards in my opinion. I think that it's closer than I would normally like to admit, but I don't think it's quite like Tolarian Academy, where
Oath of Druids.
The advantage from a good Tolarian Academy is so much greater than the advantage from a good Crusade.
Okay, but you're inherently you're still playing cards you have to maximize your artifact count to make Academy good, right?
Yes.
That means sometimes playing subpar artifacts, things like Jester's Cap.
Yeah, you don't have to play Jester's Cap.
Sometimes you do if you don't have a lot of artifacts.
Here's the thing.
You're giving up a lot by every time you put a colored spell in your deck, that's not an artifact in your deck, which is making cards like Workshop, Metalworker, and Tolarian Academy worse.
Okay.
Those cards reward you for playing 22 brown spells, or 20 artifacts and 2 spells, right? And when you put that restriction upon the deck building process, it forces you to make a lot of hard decisions because it's good spell or bad artifact that synergizes with the rest of my deck, and you're inherently accepting risk of maybe I don't get any of the good artifacts because they don't show up.
But I don't think this is the same as taking 8.5 Tails versus Mindstone. Because the artifacts in the cube they shouldn't be as swingy. They shouldn't be as all or nothing. You shouldn't have to feel like I have to take this far inferior card to make my workshop work, as opposed to being I'm drafting the white creature deck.
I feel like the artifacts in cube are already some of the most swingy cards possible.
Half of them are mana.
Right. They're the most swingy.
A fifth of them
Moxen, Soul Ring, Lotus, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault some of the Lotus are some of the most swingy cards in the whole cube.
So, why introduce the element of Workshop Academy Metalworker?
Because it makes them even better, you're saying?
It makes them even swingier.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's... I tried drafting Mono Brown last night. It did not work at all.
I did not get to see your deck, and I think that's really what's getting to me, is I don't know...
I'll ship you the list, I remember it.
Alright. Anyway, that's what I'm getting at. I think that the reward for artifacts in cubes is that they should be good already. We shouldn't need to try to boost them and be like, okay, well, you drafted Brown, here's your reward, here's your gift. If anything, there's...
I have a Lodestone Golem, that's a reward.
Yeah, and you got fast mana into something...
Except that card sucks.
Disagree.
You have to have fast mana to make it any good.
Right, that's really...
Fair Lodestone Golem is bad.
Fair Lodestone Golem is fair.
Which is not where you want it.
Fast mana into All Is Dust, I guess, is kind of your other avenue of reward for Mono Brown.
See, and I couldn't take All Is Dust, because I opened it and Worm Coil Engine, and I took Worm Coil Engine.
No, they wore the All Is Dust didn't table? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway.
That's actually good, because that card normally doesn't see play.
We've rambled on here quite a bunch without...
that was like 20 minutes without even trying.
Without even opening the show in the fashion that we usually do. Let's show the people at home a pick one, pack one, because it's been almost a month since we've done that.
Okay. In this pack, we are looking at Compulsive Research, Fate's Fetters, Yosai the Morningstar, Sliver Queen, Reassembling Skeleton, Mishra's Factory, Sakura Tribe Elder, Seismic Assault, Bloodline Keeper, Precursor Golem, Animate Dead, Undead Gladiator, Garruk Relentless, Jiraga Tree Speaker, Grim Lavamancer. I know it's been a while. So here's a challenging one. There's nothing really stand out in this pack.
Sure there is. There's a Jiraga Tree Speaker, also known as the Green Poor Man's Soul Ring. There's a Planeswalker in the form of Garruk Relentless, which can go into a great many decks. There is a sweet Reanimator card in the form of Animate Dead. And there's a Compulsive Research, which is always up my alley, and the only blue card in the pack. So
there's also a Fate's Fetters, which is very good.
I think it's behind both the premier green cards in this pack. I think here it's hard not to take Tree Speaker.
What?
Yeah, it's hard not to take Tree Speaker.
What? If you're taking a green card, it's clearly Garruk over Tree Speaker.
Wow, we are so surprisingly in different camps here.
Green removal is so much better than green acceleration, because you can't get more green removal, and you can get more green acceleration.
The more green acceleration you have, the more crazy things you can do.
Understandable, but it's also the green acceleration that is in the high school yearbook as most likely to be blown out.
No.
Tree Speaker is absolutely the number one, can blow up in your face. It's the highest risk reward of any of the elves.
Interesting.
Because you have to level it.
On turn 2.
Right. And if they, Burst Lightning that thing, you've Time Walked yourself in your ramp deck, which is pretty sick.
Interesting. Well...
there are definitely a non-zero amount of decks where I would rather just have Landwar Elves than Jiraga Tree Speaker.
Oh, okay. A blue-green tempo deck that the curve stops at 4, I agree with you. Again, if
I'm saying
stand still
against certain opponents.
Against certain opponents, okay.
If I'm playing against red, period, I would rather have Landwar Elves than Tree Speaker.
Huh. See, I see the risk reward on Tree Speaker being worth it, and I guess we're lucky that it's sitting next to this Garruk to have a nice talking point about it, because I feel like I understand the quality of Garruk, but I also feel like there are more decks in Powered Cube where Garruk doesn't have enough impact that I'd rather take the high risk, high reward. I don't even feel it's that high risk, high reward. I think Jiraga Tree Speaker, especially because I'm usually the guy holding Condescend, I hate when someone casts Jiraga Tree Speaker. It's not that I'm casting Burst Lightning, it's that I'm trying to cast Power Single.
Right, you're trying to cast Mana League.
Yeah, and my opponent has Jiraga Tree Speaker.
You look at your miscalculation, it's God damn it.
Yeah, and then I start Condescending for 0, Snipe and Scry 2. Actually, yesterday, against my opponent, I did do that. He failed to pay 0 and put it in his graveyard, and I Scry.
He Moto misclicked IRL.
I casually lost that game. There was a Sulfuric Vortex in play, and I was desperately looking for a way to bounce it. But
speaking of red, there's also a Grim Lavamancer in this pack. I mean, there's a Mishra's Factory to be a colorless avenue. I think there's actually just a lot. Every color is represented with a pretty powerful card here.
Yeah.
Pulse of Research is fine. Faith's Fetters is good.
Yeah. The chat appears to also be on the 2 green cards, Garrick Tree Speaker, and thankfully it's not all one way or the other. But I'm going with that Tree Speaker.
I think I'm going with that Garrick. It's hard to turn on the power of Planeswalkers. It's splashable, and green removal is really, really good.
Yeah, talk about a show we need to do at some point in the future. We need to revisit the Planeswalker conundrum of Cube, because what is maximum capacity on Planeswalkers? Why don't you just start hacking them left and right? The Garrick does kill the Tree Speaker. I guess there's
it wins in a straight up fight. So
another point for it, I guess.
Okay, so in this scenario,
as we've moved on to something completely different.
It's not completely different. It's mostly the same.
So much for my Monty Python reference. Go on.
In this so far, we are holding the following cards: Mana Leak, Beast Within, Wooded Foothills, Tarmogoyf.
Fully endorse it.
And the pack we are past at this point contains the following cards: Precursor Golem, Exhume, Shrine of Loyal Legions, Oath of Ghouls, Scepter of Dominance, All Is Dust, Vampire Hexmage, Rocky Tar Pit, Maelstrom Pulse, Innocent Blood, Mirror Battlesphere.
Well, that's a lot of black and artifact cards.
Yeah.
I think our blue is getting hacked, and there's probably a mono red drafter near us. I don't like any of these cards. I guess Precursor Golem if I'm playing like
the scenarios this week are surprisingly have weird picks in them because there's just nothing. There's no blue card, there's no easy green. I like Maelstrom Pulse. I really like the bug, the bug color. Playing cheap removal, cheap guys, cheap card draw or counter spells.
So it's like the blue-green tempo deck, but you're adding the kill spells of black.
Yeah, and things you could play Confidant.
Yeah.
You could play whatever.
Black is kind of the safety net color to the blue-green tempo deck, because blue-green can't kill anything.
It shows up a very obvious weakness in the deck, but it also lets you add things like Shadow Mage Infiltrator, Dark Confidant's a card that fits in really well with the blue-green tempo deck. In general, just stuff like that. You can get really tricky with things like Ninja Thief Hours and Bone Shredder if you really want to go nuts. Recurring Nightmare is also usually good here to go very deep. But I like Bug Color as a mid-rangey kind of control tempo-y deck. So I like Maelstrom Pulse there. As between Maelstrom Pulse and Beast Within, we have a very good catch-all set of answers. So I'm not.
We've got some permanents locked down. Hopefully,
I'm not worried about any specific thing.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to be a little more conservative on my fixing. I mean, I understand you have a fetch land. It's a green-only fetch land, but that it's cube. That shouldn't be stopping you too much. You see the blue-green decks. It's funny. Precursor Golem is actually pretty good against the blue-green decks, as they could never kill it.
Well, and blue-green is also one of the best homes for the opposition deck.
Oh yeah.
And Precursor Golem slots into that very well.
I hadn't even considered that. Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of a called shot. Obviously, you have to get the opposition to make that work, but oftentimes, especially if it's pack 3, if opposition gets opened and you want it, you can have it.
And you don't want to wait around for Shrine of Loyal Legions in your opposition deck?
It's a little...
I mean, I guess we could take a quick note here and talk about Shrine of Loyal Legions. Now, we play Red Shrine and White Shrine because of their raw power level and the fact that you don't have to be playing the specific colors for those cards to still have impact. Obviously, they're much better with their respective colors. Shrine of Loyal Legions, to me, is a sweet, white, aggressive deck finisher, but it's also a nice finisher for any kind of control deck that just needs a threat.
The problem that I have, the only problem I have with Shrine of Loyal Legions, is that its clear home is the aggressive white deck, which is going to be playing things like Dawn Token Makers, Crusade effects, things like that. All well and good. Crusade, Honor the Pure. Problem is those kind of spells don't work because Shrine makes artifact creatures, not white creatures. So it has this bizarre bit of like non
anti-synergy.
Yeah, it's kind of a non-bow.
Those tokens have blocked many a Sulfur Elemental in my experience, which has been very helpful. And from this most recent cube update, which we'll get to today, that card will get slightly better with new help. At the end of the day, I'm taking that Precursor Golem. It seems like just a safe 9-power threat for 5 mana where I'm not losing a lot to it.
I think I'm going to take Maelstrom Pulse. I like having unconditional removal to anything, and getting the splash, especially with when we already have a fetch land, shouldn't be too hard. Pick a Bayou up, pick a Badlands up, pick a Underground Sea up or something.
It's a great example of how you can really benefit from taking fetch lands early. As innocuous as a third pick Wooded Foothills is after taking a first pick Mana Leak, I think that you can get a lot out of it. I also like the chance of making a surprise 9 power when you beast within your Precursor Golem.
It's already 9 power.
Yeah, but your opponent's going to kill it. And then you're like, no, it's still 9 power. I don't know.
Okay.
Either way, let's move on to Scenario 2 for the week.
Alright, so Scenario 2. We have the following cards. Hero of Oxenridge, Fire Blast, Banefire, Sire of Insanity.
Ooh, the newly minted Sire of Insanity, who we have not seen an exorbitant amount of
He was good
play
mana.
with. I like that card a lot. I really love the artwork, actually, but that's hearsay.
That's not hearsay. It's neither here nor there.
What I meant.
Hearsay would be like if it was a rumor that the card is good, which would be weird. You haven't seen it, but you're not sure. Anyway, the pack we are past at this point. Flame Tongue Kavu, Anger of the Gods, Porcelain Legionnaire, Ambition's Cost, Chandra Pyromaster, Seaside Citadel, Unburial Rites, Lifebane Zombie, Temple Garden, Grafted Wargear, Slaughterhorn.
I definitely wish we could do some kind of trade-in program where I could give a Hero of Oxenridge and get a Flametongue Kavo and a Chiro Pyromaster out of this pack.
I would not do that at all.
I don't want to overload on my 4. Well, that's because I'm playing a control deck here, and you're probably still playing an aggro deck here.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly where the line is.
I'm looking at this like, well, I'll have 2 good cards, and then I'm bricked off twice.
Bricked off twice. Okay.
I look at this as like I have an excellent 4-drop for my aggro deck, and I have one of the best reach cards in the entire Human Fire Blast. That Banefire is a pretty shitty one, and Sire of Insanity is out of the range of what I'm interested in casting.
So if you just missed the backboard twice here, are you just getting back on track with Porcelain Legionnaire?
Yes. And I'm taking Porcelain Legionnaire over Chandra Pyromaster because 4-drops are much... It's easier to come by them, and you don't need as many, and they're more interchangeable. They're all relatively close in power level. Obviously, some are better than others, but between Hero and Hellrider and Chandra and Koth and Kellen Champion and all those cards, they all you as long as you get like 2 or 3, you're fine. It doesn't really matter which 2 or 3. Whereas having 3 power guys for 2 power guys for 1 is really what makes or breaks the aggressive red deck.
Porcelain Legionnaire goes in so many decks in Cube. It's kind of one of those great cards to play in the middle of the game for control decks. You can leave mana open. It's spectacular in pretty much all the aggressive decks, regardless of color. It's a hard one to overlook, even here, where I look at these 4 cards as I'm trying to find a way to maximize my Sire of Insanity, although that Banefire and Sire of Insanity kind of have differing opinions on how Magic should be played.
They're a weird
they're an odd couple for sure. I like, obviously, Flametongue Kavu and Chiro Pyromaster here a lot, although I like Chiro Pyromaster and Sire of Insanity in conjunction with a card like Anger of the Gods even more, which makes me think, well, if I take Chiro Pyromaster, could I be rewarded by seeing this new Flamebreak card table? If I take Chiro Pyromaster, am I just going to see a Slaughterhorn and a Grafted Wargear when this pack comes back around?
Probably. You're definitely seeing a Grafted Wargear and a Slaughterhorn when this pack comes back.
There are decks that would take the Grafted Wargear. I'm thinking, the Unburial Rites could be really swingy. The Unburial Rites is one of those cards where the pick order on that card changes drastically depending on what cards you have. So that card could table, which could also be good if I'm still in full Sire mode by the time it comes back. Either way...
The thing that's weird about this pick, specifically, is that, pretty much no matter what card that you take, right, basically invalidating 2 of your other picks.
That is very possible. If I take Anger of the Gods, I'm not super keen on Hero of Oxen Ridge. I don't think that's true.
You're definitely not keen on Fire Blast.
Oh, that's not true either.
But, like, if you want Fire Blast to be good, Banefire and Siren of Insanity are not good.
All right.
Like, those cards don't play well together.
Then there's more. I think there's more conflict in the cards we have than their card we're about to take.
Right, but, like, any card we take only adds to the conflict. Like, it doesn't solve any... It doesn't, like, glue everything together. It only makes it worse.
Which was another reason that Porcelain Legionnaire is kind of the safe pick for me here.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to...
Even the control red deck is going to play Porcelain
Right,
Legionnaire.
it's... That card's hard to go wrong, and the only thing that speaks to me greater than that would just be to take Anger of the Gods. So to me, it's Anger of the Gods versus Porcelain Legionnaire. And just to be different, and just to mix it up, and just because I really want to play that Siren of Insanity, I'm taking that Anger of the Gods.
See, I'm going to take that Porcelain Legionnaire.
That's okay. It'll die. It's my Anger of the Gods.
It certainly will, sir.
So those were surprisingly good this week, and included
well, they
quite
better
a few
be
of the
good.
new cards.
They've been a month in the making.
Norbert, a little late to the party there on that FTK. You should go back and listen to our previous conversation on Red 4 Drops, because I think it is pretty insightful, actually, which is rare for us.
We are insightful. We know what we're talking about.
From time to time.
We are intelligent.
I wouldn't go that far. So, the last time we talked, we had seen the full Commander spoiler. We had talked about the things that we were going to want to do with it, but we hadn't really made firm changes. Between that cast and now, we made a tentative change log. It was pretty minor. I think that we...
I mean, it's the function of... I mean, it's not like a whole set's coming out. There's only, 60 new cards, 70 new cards? And half of them say Command Zone or color identity on them. So, of the entire Commander product release, a bunch of it gets chopped out because it's reprints. Then a bunch of it gets chopped out because it's multiplayer only. And then a bunch of it gets chopped out because it's EDH only.
I think
so you're left with a very small pool.
But that pool can be very swingy and very interesting because you can print cards that are theoretically legacy power level, or
and as well they did, in fact.
Exactly.
So we do have
or vintage playable.
Which one?
2 of them. We're actually seeing an Eternal Weekend in the vintage play.
Yeah.
Well, one is the kind of the obvious one, and one is a really sweet one from the Grixis control decks.
Okay.
I'm surprised the Commander is better than Cube than Born of the Gods. I concur. It is very possible that Commander 2013 could be a better release than Born of the Gods for Cube. There's still a lot of room to explore there. I think the year 2013 has been a spectacular year for Cube, and it has offered a lot more than I expected it to, especially when the year started.
Why are you guys hating on Born of the Gods already? We don't even have a single spoiled card for that thing yet.
Well, I was trying to roll it back, and I was trying to talk about how incredibly impactful Return to Ravnica was, and then what a major letdown Gatecrash, and to a lesser extent Dragon's Maze was. Following that. Dragon's Maze was a completely different kind of letdown. Dragon's Maze is a very poor financial letdown. I mean, that set is worth nothing right now. But I'm not going to become the new heavy meta of let's talk about Magic, but then strangely just talk about card pricing for an hour. We're not going to do that. So let's talk about Magic.
Anyway, so we got two slides worth of changes. So first, we've got Divine Deflection becoming Darksteel Mutation.
So, already right out of the gate, we have one that is...
the majority of these are Commander 2013 cards.
I think it's 50-50. I don't know. Anyway, Divine Deflection seems too slow and too situational these days.
I like that card when it was Shining Shoal, i.e. when it cost 0 mana.
Okay.
But, I don't like paying for it. But I also don't like giving multiple cards for it, so, it's kind of funky. I have played Divine Deflection, and it's been good, but it's not a common occurrence. And I think the Darksteel Mutation will see more play.
It's funny to me how often Divine Deflection kind of became a trick that people could see coming, and that was not something I expected. I really thought that card would be better in the long run, and it just didn't. It wasn't impactful at this point in the game. Now, the more controversial thing isn't so much the removal of Divine Deflection, but moreover that we have opted for the new pseudo-pacifism over Unexpected Absence from Commander 2013, or possibly Temporal Isolation from...
Temporal Isolation is the one when we were talking about this, everyone was like, why don't you don't play Temporal Isolation? Why did you do that first? I like Darksteel Mutation as the way, like, the humility effect, being like the no matter what your problem is, we've solved it. I like, and the fact that you make it indestructible. You can occasionally get cute with it, put it on your own thing with a bunch of counters on it.
Yeah, or
equipment. Like all of a sudden you have an.
I can't stop this thrun. I'll make my guy a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a little more play to it than with Temporal Isolation. Whereas with Temporal Isolation, really the only play is like put it on my guy, attack with Shadow, second mid combat, after blockers. You know.
So the thing about Unexpected Absence for me,
slow.
Very similar. Now it does stop things other than
very slow,
other than creatures, but at what cost? Now if we're just cutting a card,
X and 2 white.
It's double white, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
X.
Sorry, X and 2 white. Okay.
That's the cost.
We all say mana cost differently. I always start with I remember the revised rulebook was you say what the colored portion is first.
White X.
Yeah, and then you do the colorless portion. A lot of people do it different ways. They read it left to right.
Anyway.
So, I feel like Unexpected Absence, I think in the long run, I think people are going to kind of change their minds about that card, because the cube format, if that card was during Dragon Cube's era, I think it would definitely have a home, and we'd be very excited to play with it. I think here, it's just not spectacular. For 2 mana, instant speed time ebb for more than dudes. Put it 0 cards. So look it up again. If you just pay white, does it go 0 cards deep in their library?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just, if you want to solve a problem...
That's not how you do it.
Right, that's kind of... I mean, like, again, it becomes a trick that becomes...
Like, you get them when they have a fetch land crack.
Right, I think is where people are trying to get really cute with this thing.
Yeah.
And... Again, I think it's worth noting how similar to a card like Divine Deflection is, where if you want it to be very impactful, you either have to play it cute and play it defensively, or it's going to be very expensive to cast. So,
like, a lot of times I just foresee, you're just like sitting on this for a long time, waiting for your opponent to have a shuffle effect, so you could get him. Yeah, and just, I don't like cards like this where they're either really expensive or you have to get tricky with it because they're not proactive enough to be good. Like, if you play it proactively, it's not good. So you have to play it reactively, and then you're just sitting around in your hands.
Playing it proactively isn't awful. I think that using it as kind of a memory lapse could be a thing.
The problem with Cube, though, is that there are so many cards that are immediately impactful, either with Enter the Battlefield triggers or Planeswalker abilities instantly happening, that letting it, like, memory lapse is very different from into play, out of play, because, like, unexpectedly absent targeting Flametongue Kavu feels like puking in my goddamn mouth.
Yeah, that's not really...
Jace, unexpectedly absent for 0, like, oh.
And don't get me wrong, I like Lapse of Certainty. I think if we were to bring back Lapse of Certainty, maybe add a Mana Tithe, all of a sudden this card becomes slightly more appealing. I just think that at the end of the day, it's going to be not so much a trick, as much as it's going to be an expensive removal spell that you're going to kind of telegraph, or it's going to be a tempo play that could be good in very certain corner cases. And because of that, I'm not chomping at the bit to play the card, but I think it will be one that we will probably readdress further down the line if, again, if philosophy changes on white or things change around white, because I do miss Lapse of Certainty.
I don't.
Okay. Moving on from what is the most controversial change to what is a flag at half-mast-esque change of the cube.
Which is strange because you're so all about history.
I am.
You're the like, we can't get rid of these horrible cards because I love them so much or they have historical value. And here we are cutting land tax.
Yes.
I never thought I'd see the day.
Let's make a great monument to King Dirtle. Land tax just doesn't do anything.
Becoming Spear of Heliod, this is just not a change I approve of, by the way. Let it be known.
You hate land tax.
I also hate Spear. I don't think Spear is good.
Okay.
Like, how many years has it been since we played Glorious Anthem? and stapling 3 mana Reciprocate to it is not enough.
It's just a bonus.
Right. To a card that we don't play. See what I'm going to get here?
It's the Bow of Nylea syndrome, if Zach was here to share with us, where it's like, it does some stuff. What about the Twitter poll of cards to cut before land tax? Well, there were like 5 cards on that list, and I think 3 of them were misrepresented as to what they did in my particular cube, as opposed to more of like Magic in general. And I still feel that land tax is the king of the do-nothings shrouded in card advantage. You don't get to play additional lands. You don't get to... I mean, unless you have like Scroll Rack or Forbid or a lot of cards that people...
Seismic Assault.
Seismic Assault is one of the best ones, yeah.
I mean, if you have some way to abuse it, then sure.
Right.
I mean, so many times you play land tax and you're on the play. Like, having land tax and being on the play is so miserable.
Right, especially if you're playing against an aggressive deck.
Right. Because you're like, land tax go, and they're like, land go. And you're like, now what do I do?
Go.
But that's shitty.
Now we play the Mexican standoff game.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I stand fast by, and I love land tax. People that they know that. I'm the guy that in the rotisserie drafts always takes Scroll Rack land tax.
I would rather the spear be something else, but I don't know off the top of my head what it would be.
I think it's definitely time to give spear a shot. I feel that
meh.
More aggressive decks
I can't
decks
meh
looking for
any
reach.
harder. It kind of
I
defeats the purpose.
So taking out another dirtily card that wasn't punishing enough, I felt like, for just more of a catch-all board sweeper that has been in and out over the years. We're losing Luminarch Ascension, and we're giving Akroma's Vengeance another chance, kind of in the battle of the who knows what this might do to help anybody, but Luminarch Ascension hasn't been doing anything for us at all.
Akroma's Vengeance comes in and out, and it's a bench player through and through.
I think it's really a great kind of benchmark for what a 6-mana sweeper...
Right. You got to be better than Akroma's Vengeance to make the team.
Right, and Akroma's Vengeance often doesn't make the team. So
right.
If everyone holding on to their front of the vault 20s that feels like this card deserves another chance, we endorse it.
Although we only endorse original art foils, obviously.
Right. Well, I mean, the artwork on the front of the vault one's pretty.
Be real, son.
If you had
original frame, OG for life. So this is a change. I mean, Luminarch Ascension is one of those cards where it never. The decks where you really want it active, it just doesn't ever get there.
It's supposed to punish those blue control decks. It just
doesn't. They don't care. They don't even care. They really don't.
Wow, you really don't like. You really.
They just like repeal it at 3 counters.
That is.
And you're just like, oh, I guess I'm just gonna sit here longer.
It is a pastime I enjoy thoroughly.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid they confiscate it at 3 counters.
Moving on from white, our blue change so far. We got Fettergeist, which is underdrafted in my opinion.
Yeah, he's not quite as criminally underdrafted as Serendipity, which is confusing.
Yeah, because they're almost the same card. But he's becoming probably the breakout card of Commander 2013, which is True Name Nemesis.
No, probably needed. Definitely the breakout card of Commander 2013. True Name Nemesis is going to be a thorn in people's sides for quite a while. I already love and hate this card at the same time, and look forward to people doing the exact same at drafts to come.
I think I hate it. I think that this is a mistake. And the reason I think it is a mistake is blue is already the best color, so it doesn't need the best threat.
So you think True Name Nemesis is the best threat?
It's an unstoppable, unblockable, unkillable 3-mana, like, you play this and in 7 turns, no matter what your opponent is doing, they're dead. And it can block.
Did you mention it can wear a sword?
Yeah. Like, it could slap equipment on it. You could double strike it with a Johnny. You could jump it. You do whatever you want to.
You can increase the clock in various forms.
Right. And it's like on turn 6, your opponent, like, you play this and leave up counter magic. Like, that's so disgusting. Like, Aetherling is, like, bad enough, but that's at least, like, costs a bunch. You can play this on turn 3 as a blocker. Like, I have a feeling that no card is going to elicit more cursing in family establishments than True Name Nemesis in the next year.
Quote him here, ladies and gentlemen. That is That is a bold one.
People are going to get tossed from game stores.
Now,
cursing in front of small children.
I will definitely say that it's hard to make this argument in the same cube that plays Black Lotus. So it's hard to be like, in 7 turn, this guy kills you. But it's like, well, yeah, but you could have a turn 1 Elspeth.
Yeah, but that doesn't even do it. Like, the blue deck, especially in our cube, is designed in such a way. Like, blue. One of the reasons blue is the best color is blue is the least fair color, at the same time being the most fair color. So if you want, blue does the most broken things: Time Walk, Ancestral, Tinker,
Force of Will.
I bet even that's like a more fair card.
Yeah.
But like Time Walk. So, but at the same time, blue could just play counter spells, Force of Will, Control Magic, Bounce, things to draw the game out and control the game. So, to be able to play that control, make everyone fair, like play even level Magic, while getting a 3-mana completely unstoppable clock that also can play defense and is unstoppable on defense, like feels like there's never a blue deck where I'm not playing that, and there's never a time where I'm not taking that card if I am undecided. Like if I open that card, I'm slamming it every day.
Yeah, sounds exciting. Yeah. I look forward to it. I think that
I do not look forward to playing against it ever.
Yeah, that sounds like you. Yeah. I don't know. I'll.
We talk on this show a lot about interactive Magic, and that is one of the least interactive cards possible, and it's in the best color.
Right. I just direct your rage at a particular entity. It's not my fault.
You're the one putting it in cube.
I didn't make the card. Right. I'm just acknowledging
its
existence.
We just not put it in cube.
That's how we pretend it just doesn't exist.
It's the same way we pretend sort of Body and Mind and Jace Memory Adept, because they're not fun to play against.
Yeah, but those are 2 turns. This card's 7 turns.
Right, but this card also plays D.
Whatever.
Whatever. The first time you get killed by this thing wearing multiple equipment, come see me. Yeah. So moving on from that, Decree of Pain, and we're cutting a lot of dirtling out of this. Is the anti-dirtle change list I just noticed.
What's wrong with that? You're the one who wants to be more proactive.
Nothing. I noticed a theme. Decree of Pain is becoming Curse of Shallow Graves.
Now, we talked extensively about this card when it was spoiled on the show, and we were pretty split down the middle on this card. Has your opinion changed?
No. I'm on wait and see.
Okay. I am on pro status. I think that the enchantments that make zombies at efficiently costed mana enchantments are where I want to be.
Quick aside, name a card in this entire changelog that is better than True Nemesis or deals with it in any way. The answer is none.
That's not true. The card you're just about to talk about kills it.
Toxic Deluge?
Yeah.
Coming in for Tainted Pact?
Yeah, we could really kind of swap those two on the changelog. It's more like Decree of Pain became Toxic Deluge. And,
right.
Yeah, but whatever. It doesn't
matter. It's all the same mode bag. I like Tainted Pact. I'm a little sad to see it go. I was glad it saw play on this last cube draft.
Yeah, the card always sees play. I mean, that's why it's always coming back.
That's why it's getting cut.
Yeah. No, it just doesn't do enough because black is that color we're really trying to revamp, and I think that Tainted Pact is just not impactful enough to play as where Toxic Deluge is this really great.
I think Toxic Deluge is very good.
Yes, vintage playable.
Very, very good.
In fact, yes. Ophenomancer, that was the gray ogre that makes a snake guy. What's his stats again?
So I like Ophiomancer. He just didn't feel like he did enough. Like there are going to be times where, this is a 2/2. So
it's like a 3-power.
You get a 1/1 death touch every turn if you control
death touch. Yeah. What is death touch? That's pretty good.
So there are going to be times when this is like absolutely like slams the brakes on whatever your opponent's doing, and now they can't get through, and it's awesome. The problem is that it's a 2/2 for 3, so it's not exactly combat ready. It doesn't brawl well on its own.
This card reminds me a lot of Apocryphite.
That's weird. I don't...
It's like the 1-power is unblockable all the time, and it has this kind of recursive element similar to Apocryphite.
It's clearly very good with things like Sacrifice Effects. Shallow Grave is also very good with Sacrifice Effects. There are just a lot of decks where I feel like if you're not actively abusing Ophiomancer, any Sacrifice Effects in general, there are going to be decks where it's like, okay, you put 3 power in play for 3 mana. Like,
but not even necessarily, because you don't get it until the beginning of your upkeep. Oh, it's the beginning of each upkeep.
yeah.
Alright, that's slightly better. I'd read it as your upkeep.
It's very good with bombardment, you know.
It's pretty good with bombardment. It's obviously better. It's better with mortar pod because it's the creature deals the damage and still has death touch.
Yeah, that's true.
I like that.
It is. It just like it feels like there are a lot of decks that are like, okay, I don't care.
Right.
Like whatever.
Right. Similar to Apocrypha.
You have 3 power guys.
Exactly.
So it's a great card when you're abusing it.
If you control no snakes. There's no other. Is there any other time that backfires other than if you're the guy with Chameleon Colossus?
Secure Tri-Builder.
Secure Tri-Builder. That's easily
shut it down. Shut it down.
Easily fixable.
Shut it down. Orin Viper.
Orin Viper. So far you've named 2 green cards that I don't really see working well with this card already.
Chameleon Colossus.
3 green cards. 3 green snakes.
Are there any other changelings?
Well, Mutavault, but that doesn't really count.
No. There's no, yeah.
There's no avian changeling in the cube. There's no like blue. There's no air elemental changeling.
No.
Huh. Kind of weird.
We're not playing
mirror entity. True mirror entity.
Mirror entity. Yeah. Crib swap tokens. Yeah.
That would be the ultimate nut punch. Would be you cast this guy and your opponent crib swaps another one of your creatures.
And you're just like, ah, shit.
Now I have to kill my token. Alright, well now it's every upkeep. It is a better card than I originally given it credit for, since you have the kind of Verdant Force style effect.
If you can abuse it twice a turn, then clearly it's very good. But I think that...
But even, like, people are talking about how great it is with Gobble of Orbit. Even Forked Bolt eventually, alter or whatever every turn is only okay. This is a cube format. It's not.
I mean, would you play an enchantment that said at the beginning of each upkeep deal 1 damage to a creature or player?
A better than Curse of Pierced Hearts.
Right. Would you play that? If it was if it was a 2-card combo, would you play that?
No. If it cost 1 mana, yes.
How about 5 over 2 cards?
Oh, it's like Shrine. What was the
5 over 2 cards and 2 colors?
It's the red shrine.
What's the red?
From Champions of Kamigawa.
Oh, yeah, it's Honden.
Yeah.
No, but Honden was only your upkeep. I'm saying every.
All right.
Anyway, I just think that...
not as bad as originally thought. I think that to me, this card is a better shot at making the cube down the line.
I think it is.
Than Unexpected Absence.
I think they're both close. If only because I don't like some of the white cards.
Heck doesn't like white cards, so he likes... by proxy, he likes Unexpected Absence.
The gap it has to clear is smaller.
Yeah, I just see too many times this card being cast and your opponent being like, whew, that is so much better than something else that could have happened.
That is so not relevant. I'll cast Tinker. No, see, this is what I'm talking about. We're still playing shitty Gideon.
I think what this should really tell you is that Eck has not drafted white in like 2 months.
That has nothing to do with shitty Gideon being in the cube, sir. I'm not taking that card ever. I play mono white in a pack with nothing but shitty Gideon and cards off color. I'm taking an off color card. I'm hacking over
off color card.
So moving on from those changes, next change up. Reckless Charge becoming the Hammer.
You're getting your Hammer. You loved Hammer during the spoiler season.
I do love Hammer. I think Hammer is a good addition. I think that it will see play. I think that it will be impactful. Reckless Charge only very rarely came out to play.
I had a bad episode with it a couple weeks ago. I don't want to talk about it.
All right,
definitely misplayed my Reckless Charge.
I
think that card can be a bit of an unsung hero. I think that it definitely heroic mechanic. Anyway, it might be more impactful when we see what gods are born in future sets. It's a lot of surprise damage, but Hammer seems like it has more reach right now, and I do want to, we'll throw it a bone here. We'll try it out. We'll see how.
Just as a quick aside, back on Ophiomancer, it is a black guy that costs 3,
which is good. Yes.
Which is relevant. Right. Anyway, Smash of Smithereens is coming out, and it's becoming a Witch Hunt, also known as Big Ass Sulfuric Vortex.
Double Vortex.
So this is an interesting change. Smash of Smithereens was certainly one of the better artifact removal spells, albeit one of the most narrow.
It was your number 1 sideboard card.
Yes.
And I think that was what was my problem with it, because cards like Naturalize and Disenchant could often be your 20 to 23rd main deck card, as well as your first sideboard card. And Smash was always one of those cards where it was probably good enough to main deck, too many people were like, I don't want to main deck it. They were always like really unhappy if they did main deck it.
It's true.
And then oftentimes when they did, it would almost be too swingy because you weren't sure. It could be big blowouts.
Oftentimes it wasn't, though.
Yeah.
When your opponent is at low life, having a Smash Smithereens rot in your hand is one of the worst feelings. Just like play a Mindstone, or not Mindstone, but play like Belwar Stone something.
I would even accept Dark Steel Ingot.
Yeah. So Witch Hunt, getting a shot. Sulfuric Vortex is just so powerful. We'll take +2 damage, +2 mana.
I'm very wary of Witch Hunt. I don't think it's a slam dunk home run, but I do think that its ability has been shown from Sulfuric Vortex is worth acknowledging. I mean, yes, it's a multiple hitting lava axe over multiple turns, and it also negates life gain, which we try to support. I mean, just this draft from yesterday, the no life gain clause on Sulfuric Vortex was in play again.
The thing about Sulfuric Vortex is the life gain is very relevant, the anti-life gain clause, but the one upside Witch Hunt has, and the amount of reach it provides you, because being able to say, even if your opponent has a disenchant in their hand, right? With Sulfuric Vortex, they're taking 2. 2 for 3, and you're like, okay, well, 2 damage for 3 mana. That's not great, but whatever. With Witch Hunt, they're probably taking 4. Unless they destroy it on your turn. Like, if they get it, they're taking 4.
Okay.
So, that chunk, the big, chunk damage, is much more relevant and important for the red deck to get out of its cards. Because the red deck is just so inherently card disadvantageous.
Plus, there's a lot of redundancy at the lower casting cost in red, where 5 does not have a lot going on for it.
Yeah. Well, and you rarely want more than 1 5, I'd say. But
well, depends on your deck.
Yeah.
Your deck.
Alright, so
slide number 2.
Yeah, slide number 2. Restock becoming Curse of Predation.
Poor Restock.
I don't remember the last time I saw that thing get cast.
2 weeks ago, I saw it get cast. I was not the benefactor of the restock, but nor was I the recipient of the restocking. I really always hoped that this would be like a all-star shine card in those Gifts Ungiven decks, those Oath of Druid decks, but just no one takes the time to cast this 5-mana sorcery.
As I've mentioned offhand, this is up until this point, this has been a lot of the anti-dirtling change log. Restock was kind of the king of that. It's the throwback to All Sun's Dawn, to me, like that kind of effect. And it's just, in a modern world of Magic, paying 5 mana at sorcery speed to not affect the board is just an unforgivable sin.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, Curse of Perdition is this very different flavor of Glorious Anthem, which I like, and I think that there's there's more future upward growth in +1/+1 counters. So I'm excited to see what that card could potentially do. And, you'd like to give cards like Gaia's Anthem to the green decks because cards like Squirrel's Nest are out there. It's just always hard to justify. So hopefully this card, again, being single green, will see even more play.
Professor Crocodile in chat asked about Tempt with Vengeance.
That would be the red X sorcery where you put X 1/1 red elemental creatures haste on the battlefield. Each opponent may also put that. If they do, you get to do it again.
Yes.
So it's like a Firecat Blitz variant. That card, you're obviously weighing it against the other Fireball Beam Fire variants. Now,
and you're weighing it against actual Firecat Blitz.
Kind of. Firecat Blitz is double red. Where this card, like my blue-red decks I like to draft all the time, wouldn't mind this card. It's just different because Bane Fire gets around Moat, where this card doesn't get around Moat, but this card plays well with Goblin Bombardment, where that card doesn't play well with Goblin Bombardment.
Yeah.
This card has no interaction with Braids and Smokestacks. It obviously,
it is a magic card.
Yeah.
Clearly costs X and a red.
Heaven forbid your opponent is the one with the Goblin Bombardment or whatever.
Right, if your opponent's like, I'll take him, you're probably losing that game.
Definitely, which is just kind of a little bit of an unnecessary risk as well. I don't want to take.
Yeah, like I feel like if you want red tokens, you can get red tokens without having to give your opponent a choice.
I don't hate it. I don't hate the card. I think that.
I think I would rather just have Firecap Blitz.
Oh, I would just rather have another Fireball.
I mean, if you're looking for this kind of effect.
I just want to go to the dome.
If you're looking for, like, so what Cardell's talking about, the growing movement of a red-based token deck. And if I'm looking for a red token maker, I think I would rather have something like Firecap Blitz.
I'm just definitely looking at this card with the intent to abuse making X creatures.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got Perforos or something.
Tribal Force Mage. Perforos. Yeah,
Perforos would be very
a card that actually gets played and is real.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In the same color, also.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I'm not going to say it's a tempting offer, but it is one to consider in the future.
The puns. So,
if you hold on to it, put it in the on-deck binder. We'll put that in the bad cube. I like that.
Acquiring cards specifically for bad cube.
Oh man, we're doing that with the Guild Gates right now.
No.
We need an original print Mace's End.
Oh,
None of that promo.
None of that promo crap.
Yeah.
So next change on the list, Strangleroot Geist, who's been a staunchy, spirity warrior.
I like that card because I think of it as kind of a dual role card.
He's a throwback in the sense of like. It's been a while since like the green aggro deck has been a thing. And here we have this like double green haste bear in green.
Right, and that's what I liked about him so much. Is he plays both sides. He can attack, but also block. Be good in control decks because he has Undying, become a 3-power guy. But I think Vin pointed out recently where it's just like that's just not what green's doing.
Right.
As much as I want to level up my Draga Tree Speaker to cast this guy on turn 2,
live the dream, as it were.
It's just not happening.
What green is doing, however, is casting the Big Angry Chicken, also known as Pelucranos World Eater.
We had been very much on the fence of this card when we talked about Theros.
I was, to be fair, I was never on the fence.
Okay,
as soon as I got the confirmed wording of this, like, because it was the weird card because it got spoiled so early and nobody knew.
Months old news. I mean, once we knew what it actually did, we went back and forth on it for quite a while.
I was
sold.
The card's very good.
It did not make a very strong defense in the long run there, but either way, it did not take long for it to rear its ugly head. A lot of
all I had to do was smash a couple crappy cube games, and it quickly got brought up to the majors.
Unstoppable.
Yeah.
A lot of people out there will still contest that. Why aren't you swapping out your Deadbridge Goliaths for this card? That's where a lot of people like to make the comparison, especially because they're both in Standard right now. I think a Deathbridge Goliath functions completely differently. I really like Deathbridge Goliath.
Also, the green decks, most of the green decks in Cube want as many 5-power guys for 4 as they can get their hands on. Like, very few decks would be like, well, I have this Pelucranos, I'm not going to take Deathbridge Goliath. Like, that's a very rare case that you're in.
I mean, the nice thing about these cards is I think they can function in different decks.
Yeah.
I don't think they have to have overlap. That said, I'm happy with this change.
So the next change is Imperial Archangel becoming Rune of the Hidden Realms. Bant for Bant, creature for creature.
Sweet wall for Trickster God, it feels like.
Yeah. So this was kind of a function of Imperial Archangel, while kind of cool and different, really kind of only ever saw Reanimator play. She didn't even really necessarily see like Tooth and Nail or Oath play, 'cause she's not a very fast win condition.
She'd be fine.
She's not some like don't die condition, but
she'd be fine in Oath decks. Almost yesterday, I really wanted to see the Archangel Inkwell Leviathan face off. I was very sad that did not happen.
Yeah. But I feel like Rune. As soon as I read that card, I was really excited about it just because you're already getting decent. Vigilance, Trample, 4/4 for 5, not the worst deal. I like Bant decks in general, and the ability to go on offense or defense with the ability is really sweet. Being able to slide your opponent's attackers and block 2 things, or being able to attack and then slide an opponent's blocker so you can get through, or just sliding your own guys for value
There's a lot of options. Really, I'm not super big on cutting a Circle Archangel because I like it a lot, but this was more of a function of I don't want to run in the 3 or more color section. I want to run cards of 3 shards. I want to have more diversity. So it was kind of like, well, we're not cutting Bant Charm because that card's more versatile than the cards in question.
Yes.
We have to kind of cut Archangel, but we want to try this guy out because of all the reasons that X said. So,
and it might end up that he's just too slow or too low impact, and Archangel can make a comeback.
Yeah, don't lose your Archangels, kids. There's a chance that we'll be back here in a couple of months being like,
don't lose anything. Just make it on deck circle.
Yeah, we'll just come back and be like, yeah, that guy really didn't actually do anything. He just looks too fun to not play.
Yeah.
So it's with that in mind that we're definitely giving that card a chance.
So these are the out of color order late additions to the changelog. Seal of Removal, becoming Dissolve.
That's because we could not agree on a counterspell to cut for Dissolve, despite all the happy people trying to put Dissolve in the cube. So I was like, all right, fine. I'll cut one of my pet cards in the form of Seal of Removal, which I will miss.
I will miss it too. I would rather have had a one of the other canceled costed counterspells go away for a while. That's just personal preference, just because I don't feel we need that much redundancy at that. It's like, what, 5 counterspells that cost that? 4 or 5?
Forbid, Dissipate, Hinder, this card.
It's a 4. That's a lot.
In 70 spells, it's fine.
No. So, Seal of Removal will be missed, I guess. It was a weird card to play. I feel, a lot of times on Summon might have just been better.
And then we're like, well, are we playing Into the Royal? Or are they going to play 2 mana?
Well, if you're not going to play Unsummon, why not play the one that makes your opponent lose a life?
Favor Snag?
Yeah, for starters. Start there and then go from there. So, in general, would you prefer Dissolve or Dissipate? I personally like both. I prefer Dissolve over Hinder. And that's my personal preference. The last time I saw Hinder put a spell on the top of a deck was like, I don't know. I don't think I've seen that happen in the last 6 months.
It's definitely happened.
It's definitely happened, but
it's a non-zero number.
I feel like the exiling is more relevant on Dissipate, or more commonly relevant. And I think the Scry is obviously more commonly relevant. So Hinder for me is the one that gets cut. If I were solely in charge of this decision.
I think that Dissipate and Hinder effectively both exile, and that's really pretty key in Cube. There's all more and more graveyard interaction, so being able to combat that on various fronts is where I want to be.
If anything, though, you like the variety. They could both effectively exile, unless I did something a little different.
I think this iteration will give us an opportunity to see how much a Scry 1 card does for Cube.
Yes, I agree. Giant Solifuge becoming the Mayor of Avabrook. The Mayor of Valubrook.
This is partly a function of wishing to lower casting costs on a lot of those 4-drops, like especially the red ones.
This is also another change that should be
you could kind of
different looking.
You could swap.
Solifuge should be becoming Pelucrados, and Strangleroot Guy should be becoming Mayor. And then it looks a lot more like we're not really affecting the mana costs in green that much. Solifuge. It's been a long time since decks existed that Solifuge was like really punishing against. There was a time when there were at least one deck that could not beat a Giant Solifuge in any given draft. It's been a long time since that's really been the case.
There are a lot of creatures out there.
Right, and there's a lot of creatures that control decks want to play. So Solifuge's value has kind of gone down. One toughness is as big a liability as it's ever been. It gets a little bit of a nod because it has hybrid mana, but it's just too kind of unwieldy.
Meanwhile, Mare, whose stock just keeps going up and up and up as more creatures become humans, is just a baby-making machine over there in green, and one that you don't really have to pay attention to, unlike Jade Mage. So I'm really excited to finally see Mare of Avabrook step it up to the big leagues.
Yeah, this will be Mare's first time in Cube, I think, and I think it's definitely a card. So just like how there used to be decks that Giant Solifuge beat single-handedly, I think there are a lot of decks that if you play Mayor of Ebrook on turn 2 and it resolves, that they can't beat it when it flips in like the next turn. Like,
I don't. Those decks are probably pretty bad to begin with, but yes, I agree they do exist.
I think they'd be more common. Like Mayor of Ebrook is single-handedly beating more current cube decks than Soul Fusions.
True, because the blue decks are only getting faster and stronger. So if you can slip in your threat at 2 instead of 4, it's a big problem for them.
If Soul Fusion couldn't be countered, it would be different.
Right, that would be a big game and be relevant again.
Speaking of can't be countered, Spike Weaver.
A card that I championed for a long time, but again realize
you should have a tattoo of that card.
It is
hanging out with Revelark on his back.
It is a mayor of Dirtletown.
Well, top hat and monocle. There's only room for one mayor, so the mayor of Dirtletown had to leave, so the mayor of Everbrook could come in. The mayor of Value Brook. Spike Weaver is becoming Gaia's Revenge. Now, Gaia's Revenge was a card that was in Cube in the Dragon heyday when it got printed. Did a lot of work then. Haste can't be countered was the real deal. Slowly got phased out.
Yeah, I felt like we moved towards other cards like Avengers Zendikar, Palaka Worm. Those were cards that really kind of pushed this guy out of favor. But with playing it in the in City Cube, we've really kind of found that this card is still a house.
Hard to deal with, hard to stop, and the green ramp deck is a sweet one. Blue-green ramp is an especially popular list, and it's always looking for new and exciting win conditions. One of the awkward things about, depending on your flavor of ramp, is like a card like Avenger of Zendikar is not very good because you're like doing it off of Raphelos and stuff like that, so you have like 2 land in play or 3 land in play.
The old oathing into Avenger of Zendikar plan.
Yeah, not stellar.
This guy, meanwhile, worth oathing into.
Right. Worth reanimating. Obviously, being it hard to kill and haste is a great combo.
Yeah, the special shroud is quite spectacular with this
Fancy
card.
Shroud is sweet. The rare instance of wish we had more pump spells.
Yes, we cut Sylvan Might. You can only giant growth this guy.
You Berserk?
No
Berserk?
No Berserk.
Giant growth. That's crazy.
Lastly, over in the artifact section, which feels like it's very freeform still, and after this conversation with Eck about how do we try to reward the artifact player, what are we going to do with artifacts? Because again, to me, the things we're not playing in terms of artifacts that are really powerful cards are the kind of the vintage staples that are almost too narrow, like in the term of spheres, your Trinispheres, your null rods, your things that just don't really translate to a pseudo-limited format where combat takes place. So with that said, it is time to push Loxodon Warhammer out to sea as
a flaming Viking boat.
As that card that we always like to think is good, but the only people that play it are the uninitiated, because really it reads 6 mana, have your guy killed.
It's becoming Crystal Ball. Now, I found out about this change an hour before we went on live today. I don't agree with it.
Ooh.
And I don't agree with it not because I think Loxodon Warhammer is good, or even better than Crystal Ball. Loxodon Warhammer is bad. And you should feel bad.
Okay.
Crystal Ball is also, however, very bad. And it is, for all this anti-dirtling with all this dirtle shaving we've just done, we're putting in Crystal freaking Ball.
Because it's not about dirtling with Crystal Ball, it's about finding the answer to push the
game
forward.
Off.
Really?
Yes.
I think the only reason you end up jacking it with Crystal Ball is because you can't find the relevant answers.
Cool. I think that should be a different card. Now, what it should be, off the top of my head, I'm not sure because this changes. I don't have enough time to think about it.
How do you feel about a Temple Aperture?
No.
No. See, the thing is, I keep not putting Temple Aperture in Cube because I really want to put
This change is like the least exciting change because both cards are bad. Like, I just don't care.
I think most people we know are going to be excited to see Crystal Ball come back.
Until they cast it. And they're like, oh, this actually blows. Sweet. Glad I put this in my deck.
Last but not least, on the artifact front,
another key rune bites the dust.
We are down to 3 key runes in the cube, a strategic smattering of blue ones. Gruul key rune, the beatdown key rune, as I like to call it. is leaving us because, surprise, surprise, red and green already have a lot of mana acceleration.
And aren't looking for 32 tramples that you have to pay 2 mana to activate.
They also have an abundance of those. So, as much as this card looks on the surface like it does stuff, that's because it already does in various other more effective forms currently in the cube. And it is with that we bring back one of the phalluses of Dirtling, the Obelisk of Alara. Which many people
I feel like we just undid a lot of the work that we just put into this cube change. We streamlined a lot of stuff, made it proactive. They were like, "Fuck it, Crystal Ball and Obelisk."
What are those stairs called? The I don't remember what they're called.
Tombstone Cyril?
No. The Escher painting where the stairs continuously go. Yeah, it's just one of those scenarios. We made a 14 card change. 10 of them were to cut down on Dirtling and be more proactive, and a few of them might have brought it back a little bit more. Regardless, Obelisk of Alara can be a great way for those mono brown decks to do things after it's all said and done. But at the same time, it kind of have to weigh it up against Staff of Nin, which is the new school version of the 6-mana do stuff artifact.
I like Obelisk. I think that it's different than Staff. There are going to be games where Staff doesn't really do anything. Drawing a card, obviously, is always good. But
this one doesn't draw a card, though.
No, it only Staff.
Oh, right, yes.
But, a lot of times, the tap do a damage is,
at the old 6-mana.
Yeah, it's not really, going to get there.
And it's cube, it's not M whatever limited.
Right, you don't necessarily have a smattering of 1/1s or combat to add on to. Whereas Obelisk, you, depending on your mana situation, you might not always be able to have access to the ability you want, but it's always going to have text on it you want to activate. It's always going to be, if it's in play, whatever the game state is, one of those abilities is going to be really good. Whether or not you can activate it remains to be seen. But
depending on how friendly or competitive your playgroup can also be, Obelisk can often lead to a lot of blowout scenarios because no one bothers to read the whole thing, and all of a sudden they're attacking and they're blocking. And you're like, all right, my guy's huge now. You're like, what? That card doesn't do that. You're like, yeah, it does. Or it's all right, swing and kill you, and I'm like, actually, I'll gain 5. Yeah. What? That card does that too?
Yeah. This card also really affects my OCD because the number on all the the value of all the effects is not in numerical order.
Because it's by color wheel.
It's by color. So
it should in X Brain it should go do the one thing.
It should go 1 2 3 4 5 or 5 4 3 2 1, and instead it goes 5 1 2 3 4. So it's so close, but it's not. It's just it drives me insane every time I look at this card. But that's just a personal problem, I suppose. So that's the extent of the cube changes for Commander Edition. Not a huge list of changes, but
I really hope that does us for the year 2013. Because there have been a lot of cube changes in the year 2013.
I feel like we've been doing nothing but change logs this entire show.
Spoilers and cube changes.
The whole show. That's all this show is.
I'd like to think that talking about cube and cube podcasting, we could extend past that instead of just here's what we think of new cards that are coming out. Here's what we're doing to our cube this week. Hope you enjoy. With the 20th anniversary of Magic kind of coincidentally almost being the year of too many site releases, it feels like we've been talking about and kind of experimenting with new things all the time.
Yeah.
So regardless of your enjoyment of unexpected absence or not, I'd like to think that we've done Commander 2013 a service, and a lot more cards in this particular set release are happening than I initially thought they would be.
Yeah, I think that, I was surprised too, just because I was expecting by the time you cut out all the multiplayer cards, and by the time you cut out all the EDH-specific cards, and by the time you cut out all the reprints, there's only going to be 20 cards that you could even possibly add. And, that number was just, the number of cards that were potentials was just way higher than I thought it was going to be. So.
What are you doing? Okay. So, we've been putting this off forever. And while we only have half an hour to really cover this topic, I think that in a way, that is going to be a boon for us. We're talking about blue today. The color blue in cube. Just really how spectacular it is. And
the love letter to blue.
Because that's the thing. I mean, we've talked about other colors on the cast. We've talked about red, we've talked about green, we've talked about black, we've talked about their shortcomings, their their highs, their lows. But in terms of blue, it's hard to say. There's a lot of shortcomings.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with blue is that if you look at blue in terms of what it does at any given time, it usually does one thing better than any other color. Whether that's counter spells, draw cards, combo stuff, whatever you're talking about. But it does the other things very poorly. But with Cube, because we're looking at all of Magic at once, we have the wide field view. Blue does everything really well because you take the card drawing from the early days and you match it with the counter spells of the middle era
And the threats of the new
threats
stuff.
of the new stuff, and then the combo cards of the Urza block time. And by doing that, like blue just just doesn't have any real weak points. Like we joke all the time, mono blue cube, you could absolutely do it.
It'll be really fun because who doesn't like drawing cards, manipulating the decks, giving permission?
Right, blue does does everything also. Like
it does all the fun things in Magic. I mean, yes, it still can't deal with the enchantments and the artifacts very well.
Bounce them, confiscate them.
You can confiscate.
Counter them.
Right.
Annul, like literal annul.
So yeah, again, this is good timing because we just come off of Eternal Weekend, and there's still a lot of players out there that were kind of surprised at the number of decks that played blue cards in them. That being almost all of them. Definitely the ones that were doing the winning.
They play at least 2 blue cards. Time Walk and Ancestral.
It's so sad to watch people try to play like there was like a junk deck on coverage at Eternal Weekend where the guys playing like the Chrysali Pride Mages and the Abrupt Decay, like kind of like a Hate Bears deck.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, dude, I'm sorry, you can't.
Ancestral.
Right.
Yeah. Good luck.
Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor. Anyway, yeah, that's the thing about blue is it's the color that has 2/3 spells, 1/3 creatures. So inherently, it's going to be killing you with non-beatdown tactics. I mean, we've talked on this show in the past. I mean, is blue beatdown even a thing? Is that an avenue you can really go down at all?
And the thing is if you wanted to, yes, you could make like either
the Flying Men deck.
You could make either like Merfolk. Merfolk has such a redundant amount of synergy that you could put one of all the Merfolks in and be able to. You could probably draft a Merfolk deck.
That'd be a weird world to live
Tribal
in.
Cube coming to a neighborhood.
Obviously, Eck really wants to make the Tribal Cube. Pull out those river Merfolk.
That's my midlife crisis project.
Well, with your work schedule, you should just sit at work and just draft up the spreadsheet.
A little busier than that.
Okay, well, when you're back to just chilling at the office.
But you could absolutely, if you wanted, Phantasmal Bear, true name Nemesis now.
I mean, there was a time in Magic history, and again with the powered cube that we play, we are looking into Magic's history where I don't know how many people nowadays remember Flying Men Unstable Mutation. That was a thing.
That absolutely.
Yeah.
You put 4 power of attacking flying creatures into play on turn 2, and that was like the GG.
Well, you try to double up. You try to go Flying Men double mutation.
Yeah.
So the old 7-5-3-1.
Yeah. And
get your Dan in there.
Yeah, Dan. So if you want, that's the thing. There have been enough random one-off aggressive blue cards that looked at historically, you could make the aggressive blue deck if you wanted to. It's just like how in green, you can make a green and aggressive color if you want to, because over the history of Magic, you've got Gazban Ogre, Wild Dogs, Jungle Lion, you can put Tanner Maniac in there, Sky Shroud, or Passing Jaguar, Sky Shroud Elite, all those guys, you can put all of them in there. And, is it the best thing to do? Maybe not, but if you want to do it, you absolutely can. And blue's the same way. If you want blue to be aggressive, you can absolutely make it aggressive. If you want blue to be nothing but giant monsters, you can do that.
But those aren't very good.
If you want blue to be strictly about controlling the types of lands people have in play, you could do that.
That would be an interesting cube. Shimmering Mirages is a fun card.
Nothing but sea monsters and phantasmal terrains effects.
Yeah, the world we live in is not quite that humorous. It's more power-driven, and since in the Power 9 respect, the only thing that isn't brown is blue, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt when looking at the other colors. And over the years, we've gone to some pretty narrow avenues to try to combat blue's power. I mean, I can remember the days of playing Vexing Shusher and trying to rationalize it, playing Spellbreaker Behemoth for 2 seconds, thinking that's like, it's a 5/5 for 4. I mean, Rumbling Slum, close, close enough.
The problem is that blue does everything really well, so it's really hard to actively game plan against everything in terms of design, like construction. So you either have to play like explicit blue hosers, which I feel is like a weak cop-out.
Yeah, plus they aren't even really that good.
Well, like putting like choke and boil in.
Yes, I guess you could do that.
But I'd say like you could go that deep.
Cop blue.
Every color gets one, except black.
I mean, over the years we played the cards I mentioned. We played Great Sable Stag, which only got cut recently, because again it has that kind of black touch on. Defense Grid, Quagnoth.
Quagnoth saw play for quite a while.
Cavern of Souls, Demon Fire, Carabex Torch, Volcanic Fallout.
Urza's Rage.
We still play that. I'm talking about cards that we played that have cut in the past.
Volcanic Fallout.
Yes. So you want cards that can do other things and not specifically just be like Scragnoth.
Right. Like, a lot of cards are so, like, here is the blue hoser. That's all it does. So, like, a good example of a modern card, and we didn't really talk about it too much on the show, something like Mistcutter Hydra. Right?
That's
a reasonable creature.
Right there.
It's a 4-power haste guy for 5. That's not the worst. It's splashable. Not bad. But it's also, like, obviously very powerful against blue.
Ranger Vios for it.
You could Ranger Vios for it. You could Revelar it back.
With your Spear of Heliod.
Yeah, there you go. So, it's close to being good enough. Being flexible, having haste is good. And, it's just right. It's close in terms of power level. It gets a big push because, and really the only reason, if it didn't have Pro Blue and can't be counted on it, no one would really be talking about that card. The fact that it hits so heavily on blue, on top of being like a reasonable guy.
Are you just trying to make a case for Mistcutter Hydra? Because that's what I'm hearing.
I think there's a reasonable case to be had for Mistcutter Hydra.
Oh, take that, Skylasher.
I do like Skylasher. I don't know why, but I really do.
I think it's humorously bad.
It has so much text on it.
Take that, Geist.
Yeah.
Go save draft.
Yeah. Or you bought the token if you need to get in the line.
I guess that would be quite sad.
You're at 4. Like, ha!
So if blue runs rampant in your cube, which is very possible, I still think it is the best color, definitely look for other ways to combat it. I mean, I think that we've gone very deep on making aggro red as strong as it can be, and I think that's something that the cube community has really found over the years as one of the ways to do it. And as you scale the power level down, red kind of stays the same. As far as green goes, I think you cannot you can't add enough acceleration. You can't add enough. Well, if you're going to play counter spells, I'm going to have the ability to cast 5 drops on turns 2 and 3, hopefully, to combat you.
Yeah, making them have it is a great way to combat blue. Being able to have a deck that is so consistently powerful in the other card, like always casting 5 drops on turn 2,
or just always having those 5 power guys for 4.
Right, so you just make them have it all the time. Mm-hmm. Another good way is one of the areas blue lacks any real control over the game is the graveyard.
So the bizarre decks get back in there.
If you're abusing the graveyard, blue very likely can't interact profitably with you.
I don't think it's very likely. I think it's almost non-existent.
Right, but I'm saying, like, as long as you're doing something beyond just, like, casting 1 spell a turn or whatever, mm-hmm. like, it's very likely that whatever you're doing is probably going over the top of whatever blue is trying to do. And it's harder for them. There's very little in the color that's going to interact with you. They would have to have, like, the Relic of Progenitus kind of cards in their sideboard, or the Nihil Spellbomb. So, that's an avenue that blue doesn't doesn't interact with.
Well, you've got the pressure of red and green. You've got the recursion capabilities of black, but you also have the disruption capabilities of black. I mean, I think that at this point we play the full complement, short of Despise, which isn't even the one you want, of your Thoughtseize, your Duress, your Inquisition, your... Any other selective discard? Oh, we still have Cabal Interrogator, which is kind of a nod to against those blue control decks.
It's funny how silly yet serious at the same time the conversation about Cabal Therapy is.
Yes.
Obviously, Cabal Therapy and Cube is a very silly conversation, but it's one of those things where we're like, Cabal Therapy. You know.
This card is good. I think for every new Thoughtseize variant you add to the Cube, it keeps bringing Cabal Therapy up again. It's like, well, you look at your opponent's hand.
It's the single biggest outlier, I think.
Between, like, competitive tournament Magic and Cube format?
In terms of, like, a card that just isn't good in Cube. Or it's like much worse in Cube because of Singleton.
I guess. Yeah,
I mean, I guess, like, Maelstrom Pulse, but at least that hits tokens.
Sure, I mean...
Like, Cabal Therapy is never getting more than one card.
But Maelstrom Pulse solves problems.
You're right.
Cabal Therapy tries to be proactive in a world where it's very difficult to be proactive in that fashion.
We're not playing... The only ones we're not playing are, like, the other Urza Block ones, Ostracize, and the land one.
Encroach.
Encroach, that was it. So we're not playing Ostracize, we're not playing Encroach.
We even play Appetite for Brains.
We're not playing Despise. I guess we're not playing Blackmail.
Oh. Or Addle.
Don't Addle cost 2.
It does, but it's in a similar vein, I feel like.
Yeah.
No distress. I'd also feel remiss if I didn't mention Meddling Mage in the vein of the very Narrows, just because there's a card with much love, but you'll just never be able to play it.
Yes.
Anyway, it's mildly off topic, but it is ways to combat the Blue Menace. Now, when drafting the Blue Menace, if you happen to be the guy that's so lucky as to open the Mana Drain, the Cryptic Command, the Jace the Mind Sculptor, the list goes on and on.
There's like 20 cards.
What would you recommend? So here's the thing. I take one of those blue cards, pick one, pack one. I'm going to play the color blue. Things I should be aware of is it's most likely I'm not going to be playing a beatdown deck. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's only a third of the cards in this particular color are even threats.
You have fewer shots at guys in your color. You have to go elsewhere for your win condition.
And I'm not going to say that there aren't times where I go Azure Mage into Calcite Snapper.
I hate Azure Mage. Oh, yeah, the card.
So
bad.
Azure Mage is to me it's like the perfect marriage of I'm blue and I want to attack, but I'm also still playing blue.
It's the perfect marriage of I'm glad this card is in the blue section of Cube because it's a worse choice than other cards, so it's making blue worse, therefore I like it.
We digress. You can get aggressive with blue, and that's mostly because the counter spells are so powerful when surrounding it. If you land a threat early,
it's also
very hard to catch up.
Oftentimes, the aggressive blue blue curve looks like Looter Ilkor, and then putting equipment on it.
That's rarer, but yes, that can also happen.
I mean, Shadows is very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's ironic. If you're drafting blue, I will usually pass swords.
Well, just because you have fewer things to put it on.
Exactly. That is when I draft blue, which is common.
I'm very rarely drafting just blue, though. Like mono blue? I like drafting blue-green a lot.
I usually start mono blue until I'm given a reason to do otherwise.
Well, you're, obsessed with it, and all you do is draft islands.
That's not all I do. It's just what I do most often.
When was the last week you played a deck that did not have minimum one island in it?
Probably 5 or 6 weeks ago.
It's pretty weak distribution, sir.
I don't know what to tell you. I opened Time Watch on Tuesday. I won the draft.
Well, and therein lies the problem.
I opened Mana Drain 2 weeks ago.
The problem is the moral of this segment should be you should be drafting blue because you'll win the draft every time.
And that is why we've played so many hate cards in the past, and why we continue to look for ways to keep the Cube format balanced in the Powered Arena, and have difficulty doing so.
Right.
But should you find yourself drafting blue, let us close out the evening on some pointers for doing so. Maybe we should start with the common archetypes of the two color combinations. You start with blue-green. How does blue-green as a deck differ from the other variations of blue when drafting it?
Blue-green is best played as a pure ramp deck. Blue-green is one of the best ramp variants.
Interesting.
We can get Vin, and if Vin wasn't at work, we could get him on speakerphone or something.
I will disagree, but I do continue.
Turn 3 Frost Titan is completely insane.
Better than Grave Titan, Sun Titan?
Yes.
Okay.
the ability, like just the ability to accelerate to then be able to like play a draw spell and a counter spell in the same turn, or play a threat with counter backup faster, is so much more relevant in green blue. That the other colors, you just have to either wait around so much longer or play cheap threats. Like in green blue, you can hit your 6-drop and still have at least a counter spell up on turn 4 or 5,
ideally,
as opposed to turn 8, and that jump in time is just so unfair.
Completely agree. I think that the bridge between the archetype you're referring to and the archetype that I will segue into here would be Edric, which is the card that allows all those mana elves and cards that you have mentioned from the deck that you're playing to combine with the deck that I like to play most when playing blue-green, and that's kind of the more of the tempo creatures deck, because again, blue and green, the color combination, is the perfect marriage between green is the 2/3 creatures, 1/3 spells,
right,
where blue is the
one of the best
counter to that.
One of the best green-blue cards, one of the best green cards, period, is Oracle Moldiah, and it especially shines in blue-green. Blue-green mainly because you get to take even more advantage of blue's deck manipulation. So cards like Brainstorm just become completely bananas. Like, it becomes literal ancestral. And
won't disagree with you there, but I will say that I really like to tend my blue-green decks the other direction. If I'm going to go like Mana Elf into like Vendilion Click, I want to get my Dazes, I want to get my Memory Lapses, I want to get my my Remands. I want to play that tempo game. I mean, blue. When I look at Standstill, blue-green is the deck I want to play it in. I want to play it with as many aggressively costed, efficient creatures that I can use the cheaper counter magic to keep my opponent out of the game and just finish them off as quickly as possible. I think that that's where I've had the most success with blue-green. As much as the ramp strategy is there, we've talked about it in the past. I'm definitely taking the green creatures that cost 3 or less. Now I'm looking at the Boon Satyr and I'm being like, that's where I want to be. I'm looking at Wolfie Revenger being like, that's just where I want to be, to kind of work in conjunction with my counter magic.
The problem I have with the blue-green tempo deck is it's really, really fair.
I disagree. Because you're playing counter spells.
Okay, you're also playing 3 power guys for 2.
Maybe.
Yes. Train Armadon is a fair magic card. Casting Frost Knight on turn 3 is not fair.
Train Armadon is a fair magic card when you're on your 3rd turn, you tap out and cast it. Okay. And I'm in no way advocating you do that.
No. But you're still filling your deck with 3 3s for 3. Flash or no flash.
I think I'm filling them. I think that they are aspects of it.
Like, Edric is certainly good, but playing a shitload of creatures like that is just asking to get blown out by unfair decks.
So, moving on from the 2 blue-green variants, and I think that those are definitely the 2 blue-green variants, I think that red-blue probably has the fewest variants in type. I don't think there's like a big red-blue deck and a small red-blue deck. I think that the red-blue deck is pretty predominantly filled with burn spells, counter spells.
It's one of the oldest formats in the Magic lexicon.
If Sam was here this evening, I'm sure he would refer us to the classic counterburn decks of the day.
Yeah.
Where you could be all instants and sorceries. You may not even play a threat in this deck if you are lucky enough to draft it. Although nowadays it's pretty hard to do because there are so many people trying to cut up red into its various burn spells.
Not to mention that cards like Young Pyromancer, Stellar here, Nivik Cyclops, obviously.
Snapcaster Mage is probably at its best in this color combination.
Very true.
Delver of Secrets at its best in this color combination.
Sure.
Red-blue Delver in cube is where I want to be, with the one Delver.
Right, that's what I meant. So this is another deck where Kleck is really good, because you tend to be more on... You tend to be the aggressor as opposed to being the control.
You have the option to be. I mean, if your opponent isn't playing...
It's a lot harder for you to play control with burn spells as opposed to like unconditional removal.
Well, it depends more on your opponent. I mean, I think the red-blue deck is really modal, depending on how your opponent is playing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've found myself drafting red-blue so many times in the recent past.
The problem with it, though, is that if your opponent forces you into a role that the cards... like, it's easy for that deck to get forced into playing control or forced into being the aggressor, and with a slightly suboptimal build or even suboptimal draws in a good version of it, you can fall prey to just not being... like, it's very easy for red blue to become a bad control deck
Right.
or a bad aggro deck.
Right.
If your opponent says that is your new role. Like,
For example, if your opponent resolves Thrun early in the game, your deck
not do anything.
can have big problems.
Like, all the cards all of a sudden are just...
Or
the text falls off of them.
Or the match I lost 2 weeks ago when I was playing Red-Blue when my opponent had Baneslayer with Force of Will backup, and then I just could not interact with that card the rest of the game. I promptly lost 4 turns later.
But I mean, like, even if your opponent goes, you know, like, turn 1 Goblin Guide, turn 2 Ash Zealot, like, all of a sudden you better be holding the burn spells and not the counter spells or you're dead.
Well, that's where card draw plays a very big role in Blue. I mean,
right, but you gotta be quick about it. Like, you just don't get a lot of time.
I agree. I mean, any Blue X deck that has their opponent roll out 2-power haste guy, 2-power haste guy has got to move quickly. I'd like to think the Red-Blue deck is better positioned to deal with that start than like the White-Blue deck.
White has a lot of cheap removal. Like, that's the thing. I mean, like, if you're not looking to immediately kill your opponent, if you're looking to immediately kill your opponent, clearly Red is best. But if you're looking to just get rid of guys, White is very close to Red in terms of, like, depth of removal.
I would say that Blue-White as a blue one-color combination is the deepest, the strongest, and potentially the most powerful deck in all of Cube if drafted properly.
I think it's just so classically powerful. You know, since the literal dawn of Magic, Blue-White control has been a deck.
Yes.
In every epoch, every era, every format.
As long as there has been a counterspell, there has been a Swords to Plowshares.
Even in the depths of Mirrodin Block, people were trying to make Blue-White a thing.
What a shame.
I know. But the usage, you know what I'm saying, though? Like, every format, someone tries to make Blue-White control work, and, you know, especially in Cube, you know, combining counterspells with Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Condemn,
Oblivion
Ring, you know,
Detention Sphere,
Journey Nowhere, Moat.
Yeah.
You know, White also has excellent win conditions, which shores up some of Blue's problems.
Baneslayer Angel, Restoration Angel.
Baneslayer Angel, Elish Norn.
As a big closer, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think with the Blue-White, I mean, we're already touching on the fact that that's your meat and potatoes 2-color combination for Blue. That it can actually be played in 2 ways. Unlike Red-Blue, where there's really only kind of one deck for it, I still feel. Blue-White has the very traditional control. It's going to have the, I'm going to let some of your threats resolve to hold my counter magic, use my 1 card to get your 2 or 3 cards. Yeah. Then I'll go 1 for 1 with your later threats before I land my Aetherling, Sphinx of the Steel Wind, whatever.
Like, for White-Blue, there are 2 decks. There are the Sphinx's Revelation decks, and then there are the Revelark decks.
Yeah, Revelark being the top end of what I like to call the Blue-White tempo decks.
So, the Blue-White deck, I also like to think of it as the blinkiest of all Blink decks. And not as many of the cards come from Blue as they do White, I feel, for this deck. Blue certainly has some winners for it, but a lot of the good cards are out of White for the specific thing. Blue is there more as a support role than as a main attraction.
Yes. I mean, I actually drafted the Blue-White tempo deck just yesterday, and I kind of fell into a lot of the great cards for it. But even still, I was playing, you know, Triskelion, Momentary Blink, a Syndic of Tides, even Mind Sensor to fill out the whole pool with the Revelark. And you just get so much value off your cards that you can help make up for the fact that you might not have as many counterspells as Blue generally has. Like, I had Power Sink, Condescend, and I think 1 hard counter in my deck. So, yes, you can get a lot more reach back with those tempo cards. I mean, you're looking for the Mana Wars, the Blade Splicers.
Blade Splicers, absolute.
Phantasmal Images.
This is also the Geist deck.
Yeah, and you can even close things out. You don't have to wait super long. You can close things out with like Hero Bladehold. Hero Bladehold is huge in this deck. Definitely.
Vendilion Click, another.
Vendilion
Click's just always good.
Yeah, Vendilion Click, Stackcaster Mage are like some of the most premier creatures / blue cards in all of Magic. I think the blue-green tempo deck can be one of the most blue-white tempo deck. Can be one of the most rewarding, fun gameplay experiences. We haven't even touched on like the combo interactions of things like Mangara or Venser plus Karakas Momentary Blink. There's a lot going on out there that really can challenge your mind and lead to very different, exciting ways to win games, while still harnessing the insane control power of Blue, but not leaning as much on the counterspell elements.
Blue-black, meanwhile...
It's a tougher road to till because a lot of Black's good control cards come at the cost of its own life.
Right.
And blue is still the slowest color of Magic, so Dismember take 2 or 4 damage.
So that being said, however, Blue-black is home to more combo decks than any other color combination in Magic. This is what the Tinker deck looks like. This is what the Reanimation deck looks like. Anything else you're trying to do?
Graveyard Manipulation is pretty strong in this color combination because you have the Intuition, Gifts and Givens, Frantic Searches of the World coming to be married with the Living Deaths, Animate Deads, and Tombs Reanimates of the world.
Right. There's a lot going on. The color combination synergizes well with one another in executing a specific game plan. That said, it's typically the slowest color combination, and it usually... I feel like Blue-black has the most cards or game states that it has no outs to. If that makes any sense. Like,
no, it does.
I feel like a lot of times when you're playing Blue-black, like, it's very unfair. Because you're like, okay, Vamp Tutor to go get Ancestral, cast Ancestral, Tinker, whatever. You know, you're just doing, like, the most broken stuff more often than anyone else because you have all the tutors and all the card draw. But then, like, there are a lot of times you're just like, okay, even if I had access to every single card in both of these colors, could I live through this turn? No.
It is the deck that fears Sword of Feast and Famine the most.
Any sword, really.
But the pro-black one is really the biggest.
Yeah.
The biggest problem.
Stuff like...
I think there's great balance in this color combination, though, because blue-black is probably the best control deck against all the other control decks.
Right, because you get stuff like the Mind Twist and the Thoughtseize.
You have all this great selective discard of black, all the great permission of blue, and some great threats in the form of things like Shadow Mage Infiltrator, Psychotog, and the closeout cards of both black's bigger threats like Grave Titan, as well as, as we mentioned before, the Morphling, the Sphinx of Jor Isle, Moloku, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Blue. It's what you want to draft. It's how I always look at it. The most success over all the years of Magic and Cube drafting. You can try to combat it. You can definitely make some selective choices for hate on it. I think that a lot of the cards that we mentioned already that we played in the past versus some of the ones that we still play now, although there aren't that many, still go a long way of trying to keep it a fair and balanced play area. But when playing in a powered cube,
blue needs the most pruning. If left unchecked, it will just run over all the other colors.
But again, we're playing a powered cube environment, and there's no balance to... There's Time Walking, Ancestral Recall, and Mana Drain. What can I say?
Yeah. Just make all the other blue cards terrible. You get Ancestral Recall, but the rest of your decks...
It's like cube building would have to be some kind of weird auction draft, where it's like if you're going to include these nines, you have to include so many ones.
Right.
You have to play Traumatic Visions, which we love. We never get a chance to play.
Not even close. Not even close.
Oh man, casting Traumatic Visions is such a great feeling.
It's been a while.
It has. So as we close out here on finally back to the full episode format, hopefully we've been insightful coming up on 2 hours. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, especially on the live side. We have been so out of it recently that it's been near impossible for us to get together to do this. But we are committed to making time and sharing the format we love so much. We just need to get out there and play more Magic, because that'll stop this guy from drafting weird decks. And
I've got so many things, so many activities, besides work.
It's football season.
It's football season. I'm in the Hearthstone beta. I've been playing that. Path of Exile went live on Steam. I've been playing that again. Dota 2.
You just need like an all-around gamer blog.
I need to just,
I think that would be very useful for all of the Eck-related activities.
Yeah.
But you can find us at ekamon.blogspot.com, where you can find links to all of the relevant cube lists. We're coming up on the end of the year pretty soon. We should probably do an update to the Skeleton Cube list, because looked back at it pretty recently. It's starting to look a little aged, despite the fact that it is from the current year. On top of that, you can find us every, I guess so often at this point, on Twitch TV/Ekamon if you're...
Weekly, ideally.
If not watching this live. We are
more than monthly.
We are also still to be found on mtgcast.com, and we welcome our new speculative yet quiet overlords from MTGcast and hope that they continue to post things in a timely fashion. You can find us also on Twitter 24/7, unfortunately, at Young Mecca for the man on my right, at Tristan Gregson for myself.
24/7 is a bold claim.
For
me, at least, it's like once a week.
Your phone doesn't wake you up in the middle of the night with the cold cries of the internet?
No, it's less 24/7 and more 1-1. But
I have my phone on me all the time, unlike him. So if you have any
I have my phone on. I had just muted because I'm not an idiot.
questions, and you assume my phone is just playing Hail to the Chief 24/7?
That's the way you're making it out to sound like, buddy.
All I'm saying is that we are available and interested in talking about the things. Hopefully, you're.
Now we sound like a sex line.
It's so
See
weird.
what you've done.
Our
You've
views
turned
are
us
so
into a
different.
sex line.
I don't even know what a sex line sounds like.
Apparently, you know what the advertisement.
That reference is so dated that I don't even know. It's like today. Today, as we're broadcasting, is the official death of Blockbuster Video.
Yes, it's true.
A
piece of my childhood is now officially dead.
I know. What I felt was a walking corpse of a company for years at this point has finally been struck down.
Someone finally put a bullet in it.
Yes, things can be found streaming through online services. For example, us, which never would have been.
We should get a deal to distribute via Blockbuster.
Now seems like a good time.
Ship the VHS. It's like, here you go. 3 months later for every episode.
Oh man.
The home video market. It's a gold mine, I tell you.
This conversation brought to you by 1982.
Yeah. Every time I look at the Blockbuster thing, I always remember that Netflix offered to sell themselves to Blockbuster for like less than $90 million, and Blockbuster laughed them out of the building. And here we are today.
Yes, Netflix has only made several public company blunders since then, but continue to thrive and eat up all of Comcast's precious internet.
No.
We'll show you other businesses. And here we are rambling like we're Monday Night Magic, talking about things that actually no one cares about.
Yeah.
So it is with that, we'll once again thank you and everyone else for your patronage. It's becoming more and more difficult for us to get together, and I want to make sure that we do not let this thing die, because we love cube drafting, we love playing Magic, and we really wish we could do more. I really wish we could still bring more. I mean, I'm working on a lot of other concurrent gaming projects, and I wish I could make cubing and Magic playing a higher priority for those things. So if you like what we're offering here, hey, like us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, follow us or favorite us on Twitch. That really does us a great service. And the only thing you could do us better would be to add to our burgeoning donations. We really want to put that money to good use and bring you guys, the viewers and the listeners, a better, more immersive, and
show where we talk about Blockbuster Video?
Higher quality experience is what I'd like to call it. So any way we can do that, you guys can support us. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you within a week.